Hey everybody, KC here. So it was only 2 weeks ago that Queen Elizabeth II passed away. And it seemed like almost overnight, not exactly, but it seemed that way. There were suddenly these magazines and special edition bookazines and things like that were in supermarkets, celebrating her life, her reign, and mentioning her death. And that really kind of grabbed my attention because it happened so quickly. And I wondered a little bit about the logistical effort that it took to get the product into stores so quickly. And it pointed up to me, listen, all companies have to be logistics companies in some way, shape, or form. And that's something that happened, and I was really, really impressed. Well, it ends up that Accelerate 360, longtime sponsor of Morning Newsbeat, is actually in the business of both producing and distributing those kinds of products. And so I reached out to Doug Olson, who's the president and chief media officer for A360 Media, which is a division of Accelerate 360. And basically, he's in charge of this stuff. And I wanted to know, how exactly did that happen? How did they get this stuff into stores so quickly? What were the logistics involved with that? Did issues like staffing that's affecting everybody, did that affect them at all? And listen, the subtext for me is always that over the years, I've sort of, speculated about the idea that print media is or seems to be dying. And I say that as somebody who comes out of newspapers and magazines. But clearly there was a hunger at store level for this product, and there was the ability to deliver on it. Now, listen, again, Accelerate 360, longtime sponsor of Morning Newsbeat, but I was interested in the logistics part of the story. I had a source I could go to. He was willing to talk about it on Morning Newsbeat, and I didn't think it made sense to penalize him just because he has such good taste that he's sponsoring Morning Newsbeat. So anyway, here's my conversation with Doug Olson of A360 Media. Doug Olson, welcome to Morning Newsbeat.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you.
Good seeing you. So it's been about 2 weeks since Queen Elizabeth passed away, right? And suddenly, it was amazing to me just going into stores. It seemed like virtually overnight, there were, you could see publications starting to pop up about talking about the reign of Queen Elizabeth. And I know that's and clearly satisfying what appeared to be an enormous appetite, not only for information about her, but also for print publications. There seemed to be a real interest in having those. So take me a little bit through the logistics of it, of how that all worked from the moment she passed away. How did that all happen so quickly?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it was a great effort by the entire industry, to be ready. This is one of those where obviously there were some health concerns in the high advanced age. Everybody knew that after 70 years of reign that this would be a big event when she did pass. So we all had things ready. We had to write the last chapter. We had to, have some of the last details on the dates and things like that. But all of us knew that this was going to happen, that do specials and bookazine publications. So to your point, she passed on a Thursday. We had actually heard before the official announcement from some of the insiders that people were flying back and that people were heading, to probably this event. And so we had an internal meeting on Thursday morning. We asked everyone to get their products done. We actually have 3 products out that are commemorative types or tribute types. We also had one from the Jubilee here a couple of months ago about the Queen that was already out, and that one has sold very, very well too. So we've got 3 or 4 products out in the market now, but really the timeline was Thursday morning meeting. The official announcement came, wrote the last chapter, did all the copy editing the one last time, made sure all the photo credits and things were where they needed to be. I went to the press on Friday, and then over the weekend they were all printed and then off to the tie lines and off to the retailers and in store by Wednesday. So really 5.5 days from the time of the official announcement until the first product started hitting the store.
And how much product was there that you had to get out?
So I think total industry, because Accelerate 360 also distributes for other publishers other than A360 Media. I think total draw out there is about 2.5 million copies right now. And of that, we're a little over 1 million of that on Accelerate 360.
And in any given week, how many of these types of publications, whether it's magazines or bookazines or whatever, would find their way into stores?
Well, it can vary tremendously, depending on what time of the year it is and things like that. But this is something that would normally take 3 or 4 weeks, right, from the time something heads to the printer and it makes its way onto the schedule, and with all the paper supply issues and all the things that come along with it. But so this was a 5-day turnaround or 6-day turnaround on something that would literally take several 5 or 6 weeks. But we definitely pushed some things back that we planned on putting out there. Nothing was changed from like our weekly cadence. We have several weeklies that we own, Us Weekly and some others. So they have their normal schedule that went out. But the bookazine specials, or the enthusiast brands, as I like to call them, we did push a few of those back. But the print runs were somewhere in the 2 to 3 times larger than normal.
Because normally when these kinds of things, I think of Star Wars specials, Star Trek specials, things like that, right? I mean, they seem to, how many of those are normal? I'm just curious, because I don't have a real sense of the industry. How many of those are normally in stores at any given time?
Well, I can tell you on an annual basis is probably the better answer. The biggest publisher in this space is Dotdash Meredith, and I think there's somewhere around 400 releases a year. So basically a little over 1 a day. Centennial Media does about the same. I'd say about 1 a day, and we're probably half that. We do a couple hundred a year. So it depends. There's more in the fall and there's more in the spring. Summertime's a little slower. The holiday season is great leading up to it, but then it gets a little quiet from Christmas to the end of January. So it really depends on what's out there. But sometimes it's things like this that are tribute type issues, and other times it's NCAA championships and NFL championships and things like that. Or it could be grilling. Someone just wants an in-depth view of grilling, or home improvement, or what the hot colors are. There's so many ways. These things are meant to be for audiences that are super passionate about something. It just happens. The Queen of England was had a reign of 70 years and pretty popular figure. And most of us have only seen one queen in our lifetime.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who kept wondering why U.S. media was paying so much attention to somebody we broke away from 250 years ago, but that's me. So to what degree did retailers know this was coming, or does it kind of show up? I mean, what are retailers in the mix in terms of deciding what's going to be carried and what's not?
Yeah, they definitely have a role in this. They'll ask like, hey, what do you have on the horizon? And we've all talked about, hey, the Queen, because of, again, her health concerns and her advanced age, would be something there. Former presidents are always somebody that's a candidate, an actor, or somebody that maybe is in poor health, that had a big career. But really, they knew ahead of time that we all had product. But the minute that they all heard, we got basically any kind of trade was calling, asking what kind of product. Do you have any photo JPEGs and things like that we can stick out there to get our consumers excited about the product is coming? So several of them did like pre-launch type promotion of it too. And they want to know, what's their draw going to be? They figured it would sell pretty well in their stores. So there ended up being about 12 of us, 12 different bookazines or specials on the Queen that are out there right now, over 6 or 7 publishers.
I'm just curious, do you have, and you don't have to use names, unless you want to, because I'd really like to know what they are. Are there a series of people out there that you guys are ready for, that they're advanced years and they're likely to pass away? Okay, I'm going to come up with one. Okay, so William Shatner's in his 90s, right? You got to figure William Shatner goes, you guys must have at least one or and other publishers have magazines, bookazines ready to go about the life and career of William Shatner.
Yeah, it would probably be something under a Star Trek banner,
Right.
but yeah, there's definitely that. There's a handful that we all have in the can, if you will.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter. There's got to be stuff out there for Jimmy Carter. That kind
Absolutely.
of stuff. Those
Absolutely.
are the people. So it's almost like a newspaper where they have obituaries on file ready to go, and they just have to update the first paragraph or two.
Yeah, and then there's also sports teams we'd love to see win a championship at some point in time, because we know that, like when the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, it hadn't happened for a long, long time, and a tribute to them went out celebrating their World Series victory. I think it was in 2016, and that sold really well too.
Well, I hope you have a New York Mets one ready to go. That's all I got to say.
I can honestly tell you we don't.
Oh man, come on, get ready. This is our year.
This is it.
Do young people see? It's funny because when I think of magazines, and I'm old enough by far to think of magazines the way they used to be, right? And how Wire at the front end was always so competitive, and they had all these, everything from Time to Newsweek to People, all that kind of stuff. And it's really have two questions. One, is the Wire at the front end as competitive as it used to be back in the day? And the second question is, do young people tend to do they have any conception of magazines in that sense, or are they completely sort of, do they completely buy into the idea of bookazines and the specials the way they're put out today?
Yeah, well, I think to answer your first question, the front end is hyper competitive. It's not necessarily within the industry as competitive as it used to be, but it's for other products that would love that space. You have a lot of soda coolers, a lot of candy, gum, batteries, flashlights, things like that. So there's a lot of competition at the front end of the store, but it's not necessarily the way you referenced it.
So
but
it's
when
not Reader's Digest versus Prevention versus People versus, it's not that way, right?
Well, there's a little bit of that, Kevin, but it's not like it used to be. Right. Like what you're talking about, the minute a pocket came up, then someone made an offer to take over that pocket. It's a little bit more systematic at this point, but there's definitely some of that, but I think nowhere near what it used to be. It's more other products in the store that would love to be at the checkout or at the front end. But as far as young people go, we're having pretty good success with magazine readership, but I really look at this as a brand play. Our digital sites had a huge lift from this event as well. So, your usweeklymagazine.com has had some really strong traffic since this took place. And again, your digital platform's more about the breaking news and all the insight that's very, very timely. Magazines aren't breaking news anymore. You might happen to hit a cycle where you get lucky, but really it's the story behind the story, and it's some of the adjacent stories that come along with something that's in the headlines of TV and some of these big digital companies. But no, we think that because of the collectability, some of these are collectors types items, that this will sell to young and old.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about magazines not breaking news anymore. I mean, newspapers don't really break news anymore in their paper editions. They're breaking them in their online editions, but it's a different,
absolutely.
So, and I'm curious, to what degree is there they cross back and forth in terms of what's going on in the print publication and what's going on online? Is there a lot of cross-pollination? I mean, in the same way that smart retailers are cross-pollinating their stores with their online presence. Not all of them do that particularly well, but
yeah, there's no embargoes anymore unless it's something super, newsworthy. I think most publishing organizations, media companies at this point are, looking at it as one brand and what's the best platform for that particular story, and what's the best angle if you're going to cover it from a magazine perspective versus a social media perspective versus video and things like that. So, we don't hold things back anymore. We don't think that it's good business to do that. There's occasionally some kind of exclusive where a celebrity is going to announce a wedding, or maybe they're having a child or something like that will hold until the magazine comes, but that's very, very infrequent in today's world.
Well, that probably was the case with what the Serena Williams cover on Vogue, I think it was.
Yeah.
He actually announced a retirement in a story that had to be written months before.
Yeah.
Right. And yet
that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
But that doesn't happen as much anymore.
No.
Yeah. So is there a broader lesson here that this experience sort of teaches us about the viability and vitality of print, or because I keep thinking, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, I keep thinking it's really more about the fact that magazines, to just use the traditional term, have adapted to a changing in the world in which they in some ways reflect what used to be, but they've really changed both in terms of delivery, in terms of the way they cover things, and and then with specials and bookazines and stuff like that, even their formats. And it strikes me that there's a lesson in there for retailers who have to be who have to take the same approach to their stores, right? Which is not to have the same old formats, continue to evolve, cross-pollinate, and not rely too much on what people traditionally think of as being the store. Am I reaching in terms of my metaphor there?
No, I don't think so at all. And I know you and I've talked several months ago about the state of the industry. And, to me, again, it's all about brands and what platform makes the most amount of sense. And even within just the magazine world itself, you've got the weeklies that, there are less and less of all the time, but they've had to transform and reinvent themselves. Like I said, the story behind the story and some of the adjacency things, and what did this celebrity think about when Chris Rock got slapped, and a whole bunch of more in-depth type approach to this thing. And then on the other end, you've got these bookazines or specials. In this case, it happens to be a tribute issue, but the higher end, the premium. So you've got the value end, which is still thriving. And then you got the premium end. So I would suggest to you that the value end is more of the weeklies. The premium is more of these enthusiast specials, whatever you want to call them. I also like to call them participation brands, because if you're participating in something, you're much more likely to spend a lot of money on it, right? If you love to do something. It's the stuff in the middle, honestly, that's changing tremendously. And you can point at countless examples of 12 times magazines, or 10 times, or 6 times a year magazines. They're all either now quarterly or digital only. Right. There's not a lot left in the middle. So you either got to be on the value end of this thing or the premium end of this thing. And these bookazines on the Queen are definitely on the premium end. They're $14.99 on average.
Like so much of life, it's the muddy middle where if you're in the muddy middle, you're likely to get lost, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But hey, Kevin, I want to give one shout out too. I neglected to mention how prepared the distribution part of our business was in this whole thing too. So not only were the publishers sitting there ready to go with product, and the retailers calling and wanting to participate, and we're trying to do some early promotion, but the whole distribution arm of our industry was, they made this the big priority. They got things in front of other products. They labeled things special, so it'd be really easy for people to see at the back end of the store that, hey, this is the Queen stuff, get it out immediately. So it was really a 360-degree effort from the entire industry.
Quick question, because now you said that, everybody in the world is suffering from staffing issues. I would imagine that had to be a concern. Like, are we going to have enough people to put these things on enough trucks that are going to get them to all the places they've got to go? Was that side of logistics ever a concern?
Yeah, well, that part of the business has evolved quite a bit. There's definitely trucks going. In some cases, they went, via UPS.
Really?
And through the commercial delivery services as well to get those things out there. So whatever it took, we got it out there. But clearly that is a part of the business that there have been challenges with staffing. It's at that per hour rate that is kind of tough to find people, just like across the country. So but even managers, we all as the senior leaders of the publishing group and the senior leaders of our distribution company, we all went into stores on the end of last week to make sure that things were actually getting out there. Because it's one thing to get it to the store, to your point, it's another thing to make sure it's out there so people can buy it.
Yeah. Hey, listen, Doug, this has been fascinating. It gives stuff I didn't think about when I heard that Queen Elizabeth had passed away. never occurred to me how this logistics thing was going to play out. So I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Sounds good. Take care. See ya.